Howdy, friends. Happy hump day. Glorious Wednesday to us all. So, I'm going to be covering a few things going on here. So, last time I think I was live with anybody, it was Sunday. I was talking about the big news that still is big news, Biden stepping out of the campaign. Since then, the reactions have been interesting, enlightening, aggravating, encouraging, in some cases, just downright, confounding. Um, So I covered this. Well, I covered this only briefly, when the news was made on Sunday. But I've been following this pretty closely since the debate, reading whatever I could from newspapers that I, have subscriptions to, and following up on news sources that I like, and their retractions and their corrections. Keep an eye on this. Trying to keep an eye on it for both sides. Um, and a lot of what's happened has been kind of anticipated, but I've started to notice something happening with these reactions. The reactions are starting to show fundamental assumptions based on a person's media diet, and they internalize those and they become the foundation for habits they develop and entailments in their arguments later on, and that's when you start to see the wheels fall off. But if you follow it back, you can kind of, it takes work, but you can kind of take a guess at maybe where that went wrong. And I'm going to be doing that with one video that I'm sourcing here today, and that's going to be, let's see, this one here from Dave Portnoy. Now, I didn't know who Dave Portnoy was or is. He is the founder of Barstool Sports. And part of this video, or most of this video, was featured in a short vid that Pine Creek made. So Pine Creek follows him, likes him, maybe gambles with him. I don't know. So I'm going to watch this one because Dave here hits quite a few of the fringier points that have come out as a reaction to what the Democrats did, what Biden did, what Harris is doing, had done. So I want to kind of go over those point by point. Before that, let me jump into comments and say hello to a few people who are making it here live. Never was. Good to see you. Is that the Richard D. James? It is Richard D. James, isn't it? I remember that one. Michael Dayton is here. Good to see you, Michael, and thank you for the reminder. Let's see, Mr. Matt. Good to see you. Spooky is here. Spooky is in all places. Bridge the Divide. Good to see you. Peach seeds, eh? Peach seeds. Cutlery Duck is here. Good to see you. Maya Atkinson is here. I'm here to be entertained. I'm sorry to disappoint. It probably won't be that entertaining. Daniel Cooper is here. God equals the square of 1. All right, let's get through the. Dustin Tom is here. Good to see you. Brian Stevens, what have I missed? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Warren is here. Bry is here. Have you heard Doug's whining about Kamala Harris? She wasn't elected. Don't you care about democracy? Well, I think he's getting that from he and Dave are probably on the same page here, and we're going to get into that. Kent Hovind is here. Ryan Rawlings is here, and he's using what appears to be some form of Japanese. I can still kind of read that. I'm not going to try because I'm just going to embarrass myself. It's been years. Ryan is here. Yeah, glad to have you live. Nicole Wilson. Rodent, no last names here. All right, and Nico is here. ActBlue is reporting 154 million from small donors in the first 48 hours. 300,000 first-time ever contributors. Yeah, that's been big. I mean, the positive reaction in terms of donations and support have been actually have defied my expectations. I thought this would be more of a slow build into kind of a honeymoon period. This has been a slingshot into immediate honeymoon memification, big donor energy. I mean, this is almost like Bernie Sanders energy already. I don't know if that's going to last. I'm not predicting that it will. This could be kind of a, just an initial enthusiasm for something different, the novelty of it kind of thing. In the sense that, I mean, Kamala Harris has been our VP for 3.5 years. She's not that unknown, commodity, but But yeah, it's interesting. Aaron Colson is here. People are very excited by Harris. Yeah, I think they're excited to see what she's going to do. They're excited to see who the VP is going to be. And that's what I kind of want to preface first, getting into this. That's a good place to start. So going forward now, if you look at the race, the polls are going to shift quite a bit. They're already starting to trend a little bit more positively for Harris, which is good. But those are always snapshots. The big thing is I still think that it's an uphill battle, essentially, for her, because there's an enormous amount of sort of DNC, Democratic Party fatigue from a lot of people, between sort of protest votes against Biden for issues in Gaza, the effects still felt from inflation, all these kinds of things. They all factor into how things are going to work out for her. But I think they're moving in a better direction for the Democrats generally. That being said, going forward, Kamala still has a VP to pick, which is good news, a nomination to accept, because she's not technically the nominee yet. She's the presumptive nominee. We're going to get into that because that's an important distinction that Dave over here fails to make. So she gets to do that. She gets to pick a VP. There gets to be the DNC convention. So barring an October surprise for her, it's there's three strong positive things going forward into this on our way to November. Trump doesn't have anything at this point. It's been, Trump's, if he's gotten an RNC bump, it's there. He didn't get a bump, I think, for picking JP Vance. I think they're actually starting to show that maybe that was a net negative for him, which is interesting, but it is what it is. And so the only thing they have look forward to is the debates. And that's not really anything to look forward to. Plus, they're not really all that pivotal for who's going to win. Barnaby says, I'd vote for anyone opposing Trump. I mean, I think that's where a lot of people are generally, yeah. Robin Wood says she's going to win. I'm kind of feeling that way too, but, I'm knock on wood, fingers crossed. We'll see. I mean, there's not a lot of time left, but a lot can happen between now and November. So anyway, there's a lot of positive things that are going to happen for Kamala's campaign. Negatives could happen, but there really aren't a lot of big positives that are going to happen for the Trump campaign between now and then. They've already happened. So, and when news comes out that maybe Trump or other RNC officials and maybe campaign staff are kind of maybe sort of regretting the fact they picked JD Vance, that's not great. That's not a good look. And I don't know why that got out. There's a real lack of message discipline going on with the Republicans and with conservatives in general, from everything, including like, well, what we need to do is make sure that Biden steps down. Biden needs to resign, not just step away from the campaign. To which I say, absolutely. See where that gets you. And Kamala Harris the incumbency bonus. Have her get sworn in as acting president, and then go to the DNC, and then now she's running for re-election. Go ahead. I don't know why they're even saying that out loud. And if they are, if I was a Republican political strategist, I would be telling any Republican running around saying that to shut up and maybe to retire early, because they don't understand politics at all. That is a stupid move that Biden resigning the White House would only improve Kamala Harris, because you get the shock of it. The only reason they're saying it, I think, is maybe because they think it'll make them look more disorganized, which it doesn't. It just makes it look like Biden's ready to go. It'll somehow lock Kamala Harris into the nomination, which it doesn't, because Biden stepped down. His delegates are released. It's an open convention at this point. Harris is reaching out to them and asking them to commit to her, but they have not voted for anyone yet. She is not technically the nominee yet. All right. So important things to keep in your mind. So let's try this from the top here, from Mr. Dave Portnoy, talking about Joe Biden withdraws from the election, and this was from 3 days ago. So,
all right, Captain Dave.
Again, let me know if the volume is not coming through. Yell at me in the chat there.
Checking in 30 miles out to sea, Nantucket. The big news, Joe Biden. Joe Biden says he's not running for re-election, which will conclude probably the greatest negotiation in the history of America. How much did they have to pay the Bidens, the DNC? What was his retirement package? What did Joe Biden, Hunter?
He's a former vice president from a 2-term administration, and he's a 1-term president. And he spent how many decades in the Senate? This guy has the retirement package most people could only dream of. He already has it. I don't know what Dave Portnoy knows about the benefits that former senators and former VPs and former presidents get, but it's clearly jack shit. Like this makes no sense. Like, well, this is not like a corporate takeover where they had to promise him a golden parachute. That's not how this works. So, also, this guy, I looked him up a little bit. He describes himself as being socially liberal but fiscally conservative, which is normally a great big red flag for me, because normally what that means is people like that I usually end up thinking are just kind of full of shit, because they generally come across as like, well, look, I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home or with your own money. It's free, man. Let people live, blah, blah, blah. Until somebody comes along and is like, well, wait a minute. We've got some problems with this country with an unequal distribution of things like medical care. What if we proposed a system where you had a national healthcare system or some kind of single payer health insurance scheme that everybody paid into? And this will be the guy that'll jump in, and all of a sudden he's moralizing. Like before, whatever, man, do whatever you want. But now all of a sudden, wait, why should I have to pay one dime towards fatty fat over there, whose idea of a square meal is the entire sheet cake? I won't pay a dime. The moralizing priggishness just blooms out of them, right? So usually the social liberal part is that they don't give a crap about anybody as long as they don't have to actually care about anybody. And about the time that they feel like they have to be civically involved and they've got skin in the game in it, generally what they're going to try to do is to remove people from that game, try to rig it in their favor. So, and if you have conversations with these people, you can get them to usually commit to their favorite flavor of cheese, and that's about it. And maybe the last good concert that they went to. But in terms of politics, they are all over the place. It's 100% vibes 100% of the time. So he's clearly talking out of his ass here when we're talking about retirement packages for former presidents, but I'll let him continue.
What did they get? Because that's all this has been. For a month or 2 months, it has been, what do we have to do to get you out of this race, Joe? Whatever, they finally got the right price.
Hang on. That just crashed.
Beginning, they whacked Joe when the powers that be sent him out for that debate with Trump. They knew what we've known forever. If you have two eyes and a brain, that he was a lettuce head, a vegetable. It's the right.
That he was a lettuce head. Nobody. That was not the consensus. I love it how these guys are coming out here like, well, we all knew that he was demented / senile. No, you didn't. Conservatives insulted him by saying he was demented / senile. Did he look frail and was behind a step or two at the debate? Yeah. But then you saw him like in speeches and stuff. The dude's always fumbled. That's gotten worse with age. But then he goes and gives a somewhat rambling speech in front of like a UN audience and press, and he's talking about foreign affairs, and he was still more or less nailing it. So he's not a vegetable by any means. I love it how these guys are like, well, he looked bad on TV, therefore he's ready for the urn. Like, no, that's not how it works, you superficial nitwit. Like, people can be bad at this part of the job and not be good at the rest of the job. I mean, Biden committed the cardinal sin in American politics. He looked bad on TV. Now I want to see a video with this dude and Pine Creek together. I mean, you and Pine Creek both, Fabio. I think he would love it. You, me, Harris, Trump debate stream. I'm up for it. Whenever it happens, just let me know. I am up for that.
Right movie shouldn't run. It's not for the right reasons. Like he has been this way for years, and the Democrats have been hiding it. Then they're like, well, he probably can't beat Trump, so we got to get somebody else in there. How they waited this long. So now what? They can handpick basically who the replacement's going to be. What is it? Gavin Newsom, that slime bag from California? I hope not. Kamala maybe with Newsom on the ticket.
They can't be on the ticket. I'm sorry, Dave. You do some research. They can't be on the same ticket. They're both from California. It's not allowed. Biden was horrifically bad at the debate. Agreed. It was one of the worst performances we've seen. Agreed. Biden has reached a point at which you talk about taking the keys from your parents. Maybe. I mean, Here's the thing. Do you think Biden drives himself anywhere anymore? I mean, the keys have been taken away from Biden for a long time. The trick is you could have somebody who is actually, I think he started to see this a little bit with Ronald Reagan, where he could give speeches and do okay in front of a camera, but interpersonally he was out of it. What other people are reporting that was going on behind the scenes is that he was tired a lot. He was dozing off, he was less engaged, stuff like that. He's old, and people were concerned about that. People were worried about it. The biggest thing to happen with this whole thing coming out was to what extent were his aides and his advisors intentionally keeping him away from the public so that this didn't look bad. And then they stooped after he gave his, and this is my theory as well, he gave a strong State of the Union speech, and they're like, he's back, there's not a problem, public reaction's great, let's hit this quick, let's get him into a debate. Nope, he didn't have the juice. It's just not there. To say that it hasn't been there the entire time, you can't have it both ways. You know, and I'm not talking to you, Brian Stevens, but for some of these guys, most of these guys have absolutely no idea legislatively what Biden accomplished in this 3.5 years. They don't know, and they don't care, and they don't care to learn. And you have to dig into it in order to find out about it, because the Democratic Party is so horrifically awful at messaging their successes, countering Republican narratives, and countering Republican spin. They suck at it. In fact, oftentimes what they end up doing is adopting Republican narrative and reinforcing their spin, because they're bad at this. Have been for years. There have been whole books written about this. George Lakoff's "Don't Think of an Elephant" is a classic one. I read it years ago. It talks about this problem, and Democrats are still doing it. They're getting better. Especially some of the newer people that are getting into things are much better about this, about message discipline, about not accepting the Republican narrative, about turning the narrative over, rejecting it, rejecting terms, demanding clarification, those kinds of things, without getting into long-winded explanations. Liberals like to be like, okay, let me debunk the 5 things you just gish galloped at me, and break everyone down slowly. If you're responding in a PR race, you can't do that. You can do that on social media, which has helped some of those politicians gain a little bit better of following, but you can't do it in PR. You got to come back with something quick and spin it. You got to be able to label it fast. I'd like to see Buttigieg. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird that talk about Buttigieg as a VP pick has been kind of subdued. They're all talking. The media keeps reporting about Shapiro, Kelly, and to some extent Bashir, but Bashir in polls with Democratic voters he wasn't that popular. The other one is Roy Kuhn, or whatever his name is, from North Carolina. I think that Shapiro and Kelly are potentially strong. Shapiro is damaging to Harris because he is pro-Israel. He's come out very much in support of Israel during this Hamas Gaza thing that's going on, their annihilation of most of Gaza. He's come out in support of that. That's a no-go for her campaign. He's not going to be the one. If she's smart, she'll turn that down, even if the campaign's like, no, you got to pick him. That way it shows a counterbalance. Kelly might be okay. Mark Kelly is against the PRO Act, and if you don't know what the PRO Act is, it's probably the most consequential legislation that could get passed to support unionization and labor in this country in a way that it needs. The fact that Mark Kelly is against it, to me, is also a non-starter. That should also be, but that one can be neutralized because the vice president role is largely ceremonial, and Kamala Harris has built up a pretty strong relationship, at least with the SEIU. So her union bona fides are pretty strong. So that could counteract that. That might work. And I think Kelly's reputation and history as he's a gun owner, he's a responsible gun advocate, and he is an astronaut, make him very fitting for the national stage. Shapiro and Bashir seem kind of wonky. There's a lot of excitement saying, oh, Bashir, you can put him directly up against J.D. Vance. Yeah, in terms of like their actual background, but if you put J.D. Vance and Bashir in a debate together, I don't think Bashir would beat J.D. Vance. I don't like to admit that, but I don't think he would. So,
Gretchen Whitmer, also not a fan. How they waited this long is insanity, and they're trying to hijack
They didn't wait this long. They should have done this before, and they're begrudgingly accepting that they should have. Nobody talked him into bowing out in time for a general primary. The DNC was happy with it. There was talk about it in the first 2 years. They talked about it. Then the talk disappeared. Then by the time we got into 2022, 2023, the talk subsided, and anybody that brought it up was basically hushed. So then it went from he's probably going to win to he's definitely going to win to he's definitely running right now. And they really didn't brook any challengers. And most of the challengers that came out didn't really stand a chance, like Jill Stein and others. They did primary them. They didn't go over well. And, you know, it didn't go anywhere. And the media narrative and everybody kind of settled into the idea that 2024 was going to be a rematch of 2020. It was going to be Biden versus Trump, and there was nothing that we could do about it. The Democratic primary was a formality. Biden was winning. The Republican primary was a formality. Trump was winning. I said in my strategy, yes, they should have secured this in the beginning. They should have told Biden your age was kind of an issue before, but you were running against Sanders, who was a year older than you. But now that you're running for re-election, it's going to be an even bigger issue. Smart move is to make good on the thing that you said before, pass the torch to somebody younger, open this up, and have a general primary. And that primary would have been in an open media war with the Republicans' effort, and that would have crushed them as far as like media coverage. Also, I've mentioned this before, Trump, his campaign, which would have inevitably won the primary just like it did before, would be shooting money out in dozens of different directions, attacking everybody that got media attention on the Democratic side in the primary. Somebody got some points on social media for calling somebody else out on the stage. He'd be on social media and he'd be looking to do ads against both of them. It would have distracted the shit out of his campaign. It would have been great. But they weren't thinking this far ahead. So I agree with Dave in the sense that, but this wasn't a question of they waited. They didn't wait.
Basically, democracy. They're not letting people vote. It goes to the convention. It's insane.
It always goes to a convention, and people already voted. Dave's a moron. I don't know this guy, but this is a moronic take. We always vote in primaries, and the primary votes select delegates, and it always goes to the convention, and the delegates vote there. Didn't used to be that way. The party bosses used to pick those candidates. Now, especially for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party for the most part, it's a ceremonial thing. They're there to make formal what the state primary results were. But there are conditions. What happens if somebody passes away? What if somebody's the presumptive nominee, won the primaries, and were to pass away? The delegates are released, and it's open. And then people put their name forward to vie for the Democratic Party nomination, which is what Harris did. Harris is one half of the ticket that those 14 million primary voters voted for. So if he's trying to say what they need to do is they need to do a primary all over again. 14 million people already voted for Biden-Harris. And you're saying that doesn't matter. Get rid of them both because the one stepped down. She doesn't have a say in it. Sure, okay, maybe she can step in and throw her hat in the ring, but let's just make this thing wide open. Why? And here's the thing, it already is wide open. There could be talks going on behind the scenes where people are being discouraged from trying to challenge her, but they don't have to take that advice. Anyone can step forward and declare themselves a possible candidate for the Democratic nomination. It's still competitive. They can still do that. Dave doesn't get that.
Because he's been this way before he went and ran. So
he was not this way before he ran. What is he talking about? Based on almost every report that I've heard, the real decline that they've seen in terms of Joe Biden's energy has been in the last year and a half. It certainly wasn't there in 2020, even though Trump liked to call him Sleepy Joe then. If you watch those speeches and you watch those debate performances, he's a lot more energetic then than he is now. But that was before 3.5 years of the hardest job in the world burned him out. Trump doesn't know what that's like because Trump spent most of his first term ignoring COVID and fucking playing golf. Dave?
That in itself is fucking crazy. But the number two thing,
there's a number two.
So he's stepping down because everybody in the Democratic Party is saying he's unfit He has dementia.
No, they're telling him to step down because he can't win. They're telling him to step down because his polling numbers suck, and they have sucked for a while. They're also telling him that he needs to drop out because he doesn't have a clear path to beating Trump in the election. No one on the left that I know of, that I've read or heard about, or in the liberals or the mainstream Democratic Party, has said that this man needs to resign from the presidency. They're saying that he needs to give up running for re-election because he can't do both jobs, and they're both full-time jobs, more than full-time jobs. He can't run for re-election and be the leader of the free world at the same time. Most people couldn't do that. He does not have the strength to do that. He just doesn't. This is him. This is Dave rewriting the narrative. This tells me that he's getting a lot of this from, like, I don't know what sources he's getting from. They did not tell Biden that he needs to step down because he's too old and can't do it. They're telling him he has to step down because he seems too old, and the Republicans are going to hammer that message home, and Biden can't do anything to counteract it. It's a death sentence to his campaign. That's why. It doesn't matter that Biden is or is not actually senile, actually has dementia. All that matters is for the purposes of a political campaign, he seems that way. And they're going to use that to hammer home that he's not going to be, if he's that way now, he's only going to get older. And there's nothing illogical about that. That is a concern for voters. When polled people said they were concerned about that. But this stuff has to be, I mean, this is just lazy, like a lazy ingestion. Like the lack of media literacy from a guy who has a media company is kind of
George Clooney is not the same he was, different guy. Other people saying they don't recognize me.
Yeah, and when did Clooney say that? Clooney noticed that about Biden 3 weeks before the debate. Other Democrats did too. The guys that do Pod Save America noticed the same thing. They were concerned about him. That was less than a month before he went on the debate stage. Up until then, well, when was he last visible in public? The State of the Union address that he gave, that almost everyone universally said was great, knocked it out of the park. That's why people were surprised. That's why they were shocked. Most people commented his downturn is surprising. So there's that issue. Let's just sit here. I think Barney Tierspaw was here. That was, if you were, good to see you. A party is not allowed to have a plurality of candidates nominated. It has to be singular. Well, they don't. Right now, the Democratic Party does not have any candidate nominated right now. Nobody is nominated right now. Credit to Biden on his dropout timing and endorsement, just tactically brilliant. Yeah, pretty. I mean, great timing, especially since it was considered to be behind the scenes kind of a mess.
But he's still going to be president. He's still president.
Right, because if Dave was paying attention to the argument, he can't win the election. Can he serve out the next 6 months of his term? Yeah. I mean, I will admit Biden's performance in that debate was bad. Biden's performance in some of the speeches that followed that were okay. His NAACP speech was not. That was not good. And the excuses that his campaign staff and his advisors had him telling about lying about his poll numbers, like he was the comeback kid. He was down and out in the polls back in 2020. Completely factually incorrect. Completely incorrect. I don't even know why they were running with that. Things like that just illustrated even more weakness. Those were all added to the reasons why he needed to step down. His campaign was doomed. That does not mean that he's not fit to remain president for the remainder of his term. I haven't heard anybody make that as a serious argument. Now, if he starts showing real signs of really losing it, because not just because of the rigors of running full time and working full time, but just from working full time, then go right ahead. Make the argument for Article 25. Make that argument that he needs to step down. Go right ahead and put another nail in the Republican Party side. Make Kamala Harris the incumbent, you dizzy nitwit. Do you really want to do that?
He still has the keys to the nukes. Not fit enough to run for president. Being forced out of the
not capable of winning. Conservatives said he's not fit to run. Conservatives have said he's not fit to lead. The Democrats and liberals are not saying that he's not fit to run. They're saying he can't do it. He can't win. He can't counter the narrative. He has gotten too old, and his ability to debate has gone away. He needs to be able to discuss these issues, and he needs to be able to go on the attack, and he doesn't have that. That doesn't mean he can't be president. It means that he's not going to be able to campaign as vigorously as a person should against somebody like Donald Trump. That's it. I guess, to be fair, Trump is popular abroad, not the way he thinks, but he's popular. He's super popular in Scotland. The Scottish people know him.
Party, nobody trusts him, but he's still the president.
Who doesn't trust him? Who doesn't trust Biden? Conservatives? Sure.
People sometimes get confused. They're like, Dave, you're magnet, you're the biggest Trump guy. That's not true. That's just not true. But the Democrats are such jokes and scumbags and devious. Yeah.
Devious? Generally, Democrats are made fun of. If you are a conservative, if you've ever been in conservative circles, the number one complaint the Democrats get, the number one way to insult Democrats, and I know because I used to be one of those Republicans, is that Democrats are soft and they're easy to hit back on. They're usually very predictable. You hit them, you gish gallop a bunch of incendiary talking points, and you listen to them stutter and try to remember everything that you did, and then try to point by point go through and debunk all the things that you said. By the time they've made it 25% into the first point, everyone has gotten bored and walked on, and you can stand there with your arms crossed, smirking, because you won. Because it's a battle against attention spans. The Democrats are not known for being this. This is fantastic. So the Democrats are simultaneously the dumbest people on the planet and the craftiest sons of bitches running anything short of the Illuminati. Dave, read a book.
I have to vote for the other guy because of what the Democrats are doing.
You have to vote for Trump because what did the Democrats do? Okay, let's line this up for somebody as thick-witted as this guy. The Democrats can encourage someone like Biden to step down as much as they want. The decision to step down was 100% Biden's. They do not have the ability to force him out. That didn't happen. They do not have the ability to force him to stay either. It's entirely up to the candidate. This candidate, after hearing from, now I'm not saying that there wasn't pressure. There were tons of people saying, dude, look at the polls, look at your popularity rating, look at the media coverage. This is not going well. You might want to consider stepping down. It's unprecedented, but think about what's going to happen next. Think about what could happen. You're saying it's absolutely important to fight this guy, and win against Trump, but it looks like you're walking into this with blinders on. What are you going to do? And he couldn't do anything to change the momentum of his own campaign. And so what did he do? He decided to step down. Once he steps down, once the candidate steps down, his delegates are released. The delegates can now vote for nominees that step forward, people that step forward vying for that. So far, one person has done that. Kamala Harris is the one candidate to step forward, and she just happens to be the second half of the ticket that the 14 million primary voters voted for. And so she's been doing the legwork of calling those delegates and trying to secure their commitment to vote for her when they hold the vote. Nothing is, as far as I'm aware, nothing is excluding other Democratic candidates from doing this. If Dave or others have evidence that the DNC is actively shutting people out of doing that, and I'm not talking about discouraging them, a phone call to somebody who's interested in maybe running against Kamala and saying, hey, not now, don't do it. Let's all back. We're encouraging you to back Harris. That's not forcing that person's hand. If they're actively shutting people out of their ability to compete should they want to, that's a story. But that story hasn't emerged yet, other than within the dim mind of somebody like Dave. The Dems have not done anything other than encourage Biden to step down. Biden has now stepped down. Kamala Harris has stepped up to seek that nomination. That nomination is not hers yet. She has not been anointed. She has not been pre-selected. She is the second half of a campaign team that already won the Democratic primary. I don't know how much more obvious this can be to people. This is not controversial. This is not salacious. This is not a scandal. You're just stupid. If you don't understand this, it's because you do not understand the process and you were reacting instead of thinking. Think first, then develop your opinion. But do not run with these shit takes from guys with no shirt and a shitty Captain Ron hat who are trying to say, I can't possibly vote for the Dems because of this conspiracy they've just done. This is weak-minded people trying to think in terms of, well, anything that happens that is newsworthy has some kind of nefarious thing behind it. There's a conspiracy. There's a paymaster. There's something happening in the background. Somebody pulling the strings. An evil puppet master that has to be identified and confronted. This is just a cringe shit political take from somebody who's probably, like I said, for the most part, like, oh, well, I don't really all care about, most things until I as a rich guy get charged taxes for it. Then he's a moralizing prick. Guaranteed. I guarantee it.
This is obvious who's going to step down, but now, what a fucking joke. Captain Dave.
All right. Yeah. Captain Dave. All right, Captain Dave, you need to stick to rum and boats because you do not know politics at all. There was zero analysis in that take. I mean, I kind of expect that from a guy who founded a website called Barstool Sports, but that's just me showing my anti-sports bias. But holy shit, what a dumbass. What a dumbass take. I can't vote for the Democratic Party because what they did. So it's Trump or nobody. I have a feeling it was Trump all along, and this is just a weird way for him to cope about the fact that he needs a reason to justify that. So why not run around and say, can you believe what the Democratic Party did to that poor old man? They bullied him out of office, and now they're bringing in the DEI hire. I wonder if he goes with that stuff too. They've been calling her that ever since Joe Biden picked her as VP, so I don't know why that should have any sting left at all. These guys have always been bigots from the jump. But Scott Duke, good to see you. I'll vote for a toaster with eyes, nose, and mouth painted on the side before I'll vote for Trump. Yeah, I will vote for a melting ice cone over Donald Trump. I thought the person pulling the strings behind the scenes was Obama. If you listen to Jill, it's either Obama or Pelosi. But do you know what Pelosi had to do? Pelosi had to disabuse Biden of the dumb facts that some of his closest advisors were giving him. Like, oh, because Biden was confident. No, my polls are showing me ahead. And Pelosi's like, which ones? Put that son of a bitch on the phone. Let me talk to him. I want to know which polls he's showing you. And turns out he was showing him one or two of the positive ones. Oh, I got 2 here that show him in the lead. Great. I got 18 more that show that he's not. And normally you wouldn't run this stuff with the polls, but he'd been trailing Trump for the last year and a half. He has not been above him. And his popularity, Biden's popularity, is under 40%. He's fucked. So for anybody that's out there saying like, oh my God, I can't believe how suicidal the Dems are. If they had put their head down and trudged ahead with Biden, he was going to lose. He had no positives coming his way. Nothing at the convention would have changed anything. He had no VP or excitement to generate there. He had more debates coming up, which were making people so nervous that they were probably having to take, Imodium for. And then there was going to be the national reckoning when they went to vote, which meant that a lot of people who were committed to not voting at all weren't going to vote for any president. And the downturn in enthusiasm for the Democratic candidate would have meant a lead for Trump, just like it did with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could not escape her entire narrative crafted by right-wing media and right-wing politicians for the entirety of the 90s. She could not break away from that even when she ran for when she finally took her chance to run for president. She could not escape it. Biden could not escape the narrative that he is too old for a second term, whether it was true or not. Those are just the breaks. The Dems had to pivot. They are still in an uphill fight with Kamala. Kamala has major detractors. She has fewer than she did before, but that doesn't mean that some of those detractors aren't still there, and it doesn't mean that they won't come out. So they have to be very careful about how they run this shit. But they had to change the state of play. And I'm surprised they did it. I was afraid that they wouldn't bother. That they would just be like, look, this is how we're doing it. This is how politics is done. You know, he's in it. I'm glad they're taking the chance. And apparently a lot of other people are too, because a bunch of people are putting their money where their mouths are when they said, man, I'm really not enthusiastic about Biden. Biden stepped out and they're like, we're very enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. Some of them are donating just to PACs, just to see, like, you know what? Maybe there is going to be an open convention and somebody does step forward. Maybe it's not Harris. Maybe she's not the anointed one, which she's not yet. She's not been chosen. Maybe somebody else steps forward. You know what? We're going to donate to them too. That's it. So it was nice while it lasted there, Dave, but be careful out there on those high seas, because it's, one should not drink and boat. Or drink and vote, unless you're Australian. I guess it's kind of a thing. I think the way that CRT stuff flipped to DI basically overnight is like when you change the SIM card in your cell phone. What do you think of Trump's FEC lawsuit claiming transfer of campaign funds is illegal? I think it's frivolous, and I think they know it. The best thing that it could do is that if something is found on their side, the campaigns owe some of the money back. But the FEC, even after accepting the complaint, did not freeze spending privileges for either of those funds. So and that might be, standard operating procedure. But yeah, no, I don't think there's anything there. The bigger one, the one that I think is even funnier, and I'll end with this one, are the ones coming out that they want to file articles of impeachment against her. Like, the man running for another term as a Republican is Donald Trump, who was impeached twice. He wasn't removed, but he has been impeached twice. And he was leading the polls. So how long do you think, what possible good would it do to impeach a sitting vice president while they're going into an election cycle like this? Too much sun, too much rum. Yeah, there's a little bit of Captain Jack going on here, but I'd like to think that maybe Captain Jack's politics were a little bit more progressive. Well, he was a pirate, though, so it's hard to know. Barney Tearspell. Good to see you, Barney. Oh, no, we were winning, and then the other side started trying to win, too. So unfair. They should be disqualified. Another excellent point. I should point that one out as well. When they're trying to tell people that, okay, we spent money on the one guy, and now the one guy isn't running anymore, we get our money back. The basic argument for this is this: you spent money campaigning against Joe Biden as the presumptive nominee, but he wasn't the nominee yet. You get what you can run against the Pillsbury Doughboy if you want to put out campaign ads against him and his pro-gluten agenda or whatever, but that doesn't do you any. That makes no difference, right? Who you want to spend that money on. If anything, what I think is fun about that line of logic, every donor to the Republicans, to Trump and any of his PACs or anything, should be telling idiots like Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, wait a minute. If you thought for a second that there was even a chance that Biden wasn't going to be the one that you were ultimately up with, you went and spent my donation on attack ads for Biden, and he was as good as cooked. Hell, they don't even actually have to make that final point. They could just be like, wait, we want our money back. Maybe some of them are telling them that, and that's why Stephen Miller and Donald Trump are going out there like, hey, we need an infusion of cash real quick. Our donors are super pissed right now because we're trying to pivot hard, but we invested a lot of money in this Let's Go Brandon stuff, and it's just not working out. Let's see. Biden spent all his money setting up an infrastructure Kamala will inherit. Trump spent it all on Big Macs and lawyers' fees. They're not the same thing. Yeah. The laughing Kamala thing, too, I think is interesting because that so far might be the one that carries the most weight amongst the MAGA elite. But that's only because a lot of these incels are terrified / aroused at the sound and angered at the sounds of laughing women. Right. I mean, it's part of the insecurity. Fabio says, I wrote before, who's going to refund them all those anti-Biden t-shirts, flags, and banners? Exactly. Let's go, Brandon. Brandon went, so it's over. Now it's going to be laughing Kamala or something. It'll be fun because if I go to see my parents in their town is rural, so there tends to be a lot of pro-Trump stuff up there. But it's not so much pro-Trump as it is anti-Biden. There's fuck Biden flags all over the place, and it'll just be interesting to kind of like take stock of them again. I'm like, that's going to have to go. I bet that one was expensive. You have to get that one framed or something. Put it down in the basement. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to end it with that one. I will be back probably in another couple of days with another one. I'm looking at doing one covering Pine Creek's conversation with Zoe, and possibly one on PMARS. But I keep getting kind of bored with it, so I think I'm going to try to take clips of it out. But with that, I think it's good to go. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, for showing up. Thank you for putting up with me and my ranting. If you got questions, comments, hate, love, comments are always welcome, but also email me, jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com, where you can track me down on various social media thingies. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. So the rest of you have a great night, and I will catch you all later. Peace.